How's it going today, guys? Black here, and today I'm going to be doing a PvP tier list. Now, these videos almost always get me in trouble. Most of my dislikes are from like tier list videos, but also some of the best engagement is from these kind of videos. So I want to make a tier list video just to give you guys a understanding of what I feel is currently strong in Lost Ark. And this is going to probably be more focused towards North America, EU. I'm going to make a tier list based upon how well I think these classes are going to perform when it's in the hands of newer players. But with that said, this is just my opinion, guys, so don't feel too bad about it. Like if I give your class a lower rating. At the moment, there's no D tier class in my opinion, so I think at the least, I think most are at least B tier. But yeah, don't feel too bad if your class is like in the lower tier, because this is just my opinion, and honestly, some of the best players in the other servers will play classes I rate as lower tiers and still be in the top percentile. So obviously some classes are just fundamentally better than others, but that doesn't define your playstyle, and that doesn't define if you can be the best or not. So we're going to start this off. We're going to go from left to right, and we're going to put the Sorceress last because there's no Sorceress in the RU server, and there's no Sorceress that I've ever tried, so I wouldn't actually know anything about the class. So we're going to start this off with the DeathBlade, and for me, I honestly feel like the DeathBlade is a S tier. I know we're starting off pretty strong here, giving the first character a S tier rating, but to be quite honest with you, the DeathBlade is probably the best assassin that's coming to the NA. The class features a lot of mobility, it features a lot of super armor protection, and it has really low cooldowns. And I think one of the reasons why it's going to do well in NA is because the class is easy to pick up and easy to use. And I think NA players and EU players aren't going to be that good at dealing with how to deal with super armors and things of the sort. Some of my better friends actually fear this class so much, even though me as a player who've been like playing against them for a while knows the weakness. But overall, the class is just actually really strong. So when it comes to the NA and EU region, I think this class is absolutely going to be a S tier class. So next we're going to be talking about the Shadowhunter, and now the Shadowhunter is the other assassin that's going to be available, and I'm putting the Shadowhunter as a B class character. I could say like a low A if I'm being quite honest, but I think the Shadowhunter is a good solid B. And the reason for the Shadowhunter being a B is she doesn't have the best protection when it comes to her playstyle. She has good range attacks, and she has decent kill ability when it comes to like gap closing and getting close. And then obviously when she gets into her demonic form, she's hard to deal with. But I think the thing is, she doesn't have as much protection as something like the DeathBlade, so she's going to be a lot more vulnerable. And then positioning is probably pretty important with her, since she has to use like a hybrid amount of range in melee attacks. So I think when you put that in a region with a bunch of new players, you're going to have a bit more trouble than something like a DeathBlade that has like a lot of protection on their initiations and disengages. So for me, I'm going to put the Shadowhunter as a B. I would probably put it on a higher B because I do think it does like pretty good damage. But overall, I think it's probably going to be a B tier when the game comes out. So next we're going to talk about the Artillerist, or the Blaster. And I want to give this one an A. And the reason why I think the Artillerist is going to be like one of the higher tier characters is because it has this like one combo that's really good. It's really cheesy, but it's really good. And when you come to a newer region, like people aren't going to be paying attention for it. I've seen it too many times in the beta where I get caught by someone who's from the RU server who's been abusing the Artillerist, and then they do the combo that they do, which is really easy to set up and like get off. And the team does nothing because a lot of cases people coming into PvP aren't really that team focused at the moment. So you have this situation where you have this guy who knows how to do one of the cheesiest combos, and it's fairly easy to land, and you just do tons of damage. And generally speaking, I think the class is real easy to get damage done because their AoEs are huge, and you're just going to just drop a bomb on the ground and no one's going to pay attention to it. And I think obviously once like the first season ends, people are going to get more familiar with it. But this one is probably going to be a borderline S tier class, if I'm being quite honest with you. So that's my opinions on the Artillerist. Next, we're going to be doing the Deadeye, and I'm going to put the Deadeye as a high B. And the reason why I'm putting him in the high B, I really should put like a B+, but I'm going to just put him in position like this. And I think it's going to be a high B because generally speaking, the Gunslinger and the Deadeye are going to be a little bit more on the higher skill cap. It requires you to swap between 3 different weapons, all with their own independent cooldowns. And I think players are going to have a problem with like managing their cooldowns, especially if you're not used to this kind of game. But on top of that, I think positioning is really important when you're playing a Deadeye and a Gunslinger, as well as just like knowing when to engage and disengage. And I have a friend who plays Deadeye a lot, and he plays fairly well, but I think the biggest problem he faces, and I think players who are not going to be as good as him, is that he's not the best at positioning, and he's not the best at doing what I think the Deadeye is really good at, and that is causing disruption in the backline, but not putting yourself in a bad position to get like jumped on. I think once players get more used to playing like the Gunslinger and the Deadeye, they're probably gonna not have these issues anymore, and he probably goes up to an A tier. But at the moment, I think because of the difficulty of the class, managing the cooldowns, being smart on your positioning, and just like understanding how to play the class effectively is going to be like really hard for newer players coming into the NAE region for Lost Ark. And I'm going to include that to the Gunslinger, but I do think the Gunslinger is a low A. I know I'm putting her higher than the Deadeye. I do think the Gunslinger is just a better class overall. Even after the nerf that they received, I still think it's still a bit better. So next, we're going to talk about the Sharpshooter. And I'm going to put the Sharpshooter pretty... this one's a little hard, because I have to take into account that players are going to be bad at dealing with invisibility and focusing classes from a distance. But I also want to take into account that players are going to do bad when someone gets in their face. So I'm going to put them in a B because of those reasons I just mentioned. I think Sharpshooter is a difficult class to play because it requires you to be very skittish, and it's very positioning heavy. So I think that's what's going to be difficult. I think on the flip side, though, I know the Sharpshooter has invisibility. I know that may be hard for some players, but I think people are going to figure out fairly quickly how to deal with it. And I think that's why it's going to remain a low B. So this one's a little bit tough. I'm going to give it a B, but I don't think it's a bad class. I just don't think it's exceptional. I think its invisibility can be kind of useless at times. And I think the moment you get in its face and like mess with it, the Sharpshooter kind of melts. So that's why I'm giving it a B. Okay, we're going to be going to Bard. Now, Bard is one of the few support classes in the game, and you already know where this is going. I would put this one even above the DeathBlade, and I think this is probably going to be the most dangerous class in all of NA and EU. I think the Bard is a phenomenal class with the best supporting skills available in the game, outside of maybe the Holy Knight, Paladin. And the heals are going to be phenomenal in this class. The sustain is going to be great. I just don't know how players tend to not be able to deal with backlining as much. I've noticed when I played in the beta, they don't really like pressure the bards or pressure the people in the back. I think they're really bad at it. They get kind of narrow-minded and focus on the people in the front. And if they have a really good front lineup and players know what they're doing, the bard gets like really strong. I think the bard can be a devastating force, and I think it will be. I know some players like to like rip on NA and EU, but NA and EU have some of the best players that you'll ever see. And while they're going to be new and everything, I do think that NA is going to bring players that pick up the game really fast and understand the game really fast, and especially EU. I know EU love, like, they have a lot of German players that play games like Path of Exile. I don't know, I always find like Germans to be playing like ARPGs all the time. I don't know if that's just a regional thing or whatever, but like once EU Germans get a hold of like bards and things like that, I think they're gonna just pick it up really quick and then like just become a monster of a class. So for me, I think the bard is gonna be an S tier, purely because I do think it's, I wouldn't say it's a hard class to play, but I do think it's like a very powerful class to play. And once people figure out how to play it like semi-okay, they're going to be doing really well against teams that just simply don't have a bard. So next we're going to talk about the Sorceress, and unfortunately this one is a mystery to me because on the RU server, There's no Sorceress there. And then I've never actually seen it play. I'm not sure where to put it. I'm going to put her in the not available. She is available for the people who are looking, but I honestly have no clue where to put her. Scrapper is going to be the next one we talk about. And I'm also putting the Scrapper in the B because I do think the Scrapper is going to suffer from a lot of the same things that the Shadowhunter is going to suffer from. And that is, if she ever gets in a situation where she's fighting 2v1, I feel like Scrapper just gets like beat up. Because like the Scrapper is good at 1v1s in my opinion. I think she's really good at dealing good damage and very fluid combos. But I think if you kind of know how to like bait the Scrapper, you can really easily fight them. I go into the Russian server, and the moment a Scrapper jump on me on my Berserker, they almost never touch me because like they're not very protected, and it's easy for me to just like chain stun them and CC them down. So for me, I do think the Scrapper is probably going to be fundamentally better than the rest of these classes. Honestly, I'm going to put them a little higher than the Shadowhunter and the Sharpshooter. But I think once it gets to NA and people figure out how to deal with super armors, I don't think the Scrapper is going to be that much of a problem. So next we're going to talk about the Soulfist. And the Soulfist for me is going to be an A tier. Now, the reason why I'm giving the Soulfist such a high tier is because of previous things I mentioned, and that is players are really bad at dealing with people on the back line just shooting at them. I don't really get why people don't just like, you know, use one of their faster classes like their DeathBlade or whatever to just like jump on those players and stop them from freely casting. But I think the Soulfist is just such a high burst damage dealer, and she just nuke you for, well, not burst damage dealer, but nuker, that like if you just give her free reign, she just decimates your team. And I think that's going to be a big problem in EU and NA. I think players are just going to ignore the Soulfist because they don't see her on screen, or they're positioned badly with their camera or whatever it is, and they're just going to get nuked from a distance and just get destroyed. And I think that's why the Soulfist is going to actually be pretty devastating, because of the fact that players just don't pay attention. So for me, Soulfist is going to be an A. She's going to be higher than the Gunslinger, of course. But yeah, so far this is what my tier list looks like, and we're going to move on to the Striker. And someone that has played Striker a lot, who really likes the class, is I'm probably going to give it a C. This is my most played class, and maybe I'm being a little biased because it feels a little weak, but the Striker doesn't feel very good at all. At the moment, I feel pretty confident that I can get into a fight and fight almost anyone if I get the upper hand. But I feel like in a lot of cases, if I ever fight like any of these classes here, I'm just kind of in trouble. Maybe not the Artillerist, but if I ever tried to fight any of these classes here, I just feel like I'm just in trouble because of their super armor protection. Like, and if anyone ever decides to help anyone I jump on, I just feel vulnerable. I can't really initiate that well because like I do have some protection on my initiation, but it just doesn't feel that good because I always feel like I'm terrified I'm just gonna get stunned by something randomly. And then on top of that, like the whole orb system, I feel like I'm missing a lot of my abilities a lot of times, and I'm forced to use the tiger thing, which is a phenomenal move. I think it's great, but you know, being reliant on my orbs to like be able to get like actual damage out is not the best for me. I don't know, maybe it's just I don't play the Striker as well, but I just don't feel very strong playing a Striker. I feel kind of scared to fight. And I think when bad players get a hold of Striker and they're not as protected as some of these other classes like the DeathBlade, they're just going to just get like CC locked and do stupid things and just die. Like I do a lot of, even though I'm like familiar with how the armor system works. And I think that's the biggest problem. I just don't like the fact that it doesn't have protection, and I feel like the orbs is just a big deal. It's too much to get those orbs to actually get some good damage out. And his damage feels a little bit low to me, but I'm just projecting. I'm sorry. Hopefully this isn't... I'm going to give it a low B. It's not that bad, but I don't know. I just don't think it feels as good when you go up against players like Berserkers or DeathBlades or anything like that. So that's my opinion. Next, WardDancer, and it's kind of in the same boat as the Striker. The only difference is I do think the WardDancer has a little bit more protection, and then its team buff is just fundamentally better than the Striker's team buff. So I think, again, this WardDancer is going to suffer from the same thing that I just mentioned for the Striker, since they are counterpart classes, and I think that's just protection is weak on initiations. They ever get jumped, they're dead, and their orb system is kind of meh. So that's my opinion. We're going to talk about the Berserker, and this is the class I'm actually going to be playing when the game come out, and I am going to give the Berserker a A tier. And the reason why I'm going to give the Berserker a A tier is a combination of reasons, and the first one being that the class is actually fairly easy to play. Players who like the Berserker style, the warrior style, is going to pick this up and probably play it fairly well. It does really good damage, and I feel like it's pretty forgiving considering how tanky it is, considering it does have pretty good mobility for a warrior. Probably not as good as like something like any of the assassins or whatever, but like fairly mobile with whatever build if you go for a build that's good for it. And he does really good damage if you get a good build too. Obviously the drawback of the Berserker is going to be cooldown management. And obviously I don't know if players are going to be good enough to manage their cooldowns. I know it has like some of the longest cooldowns of all characters in the game, so that may be a problem for players. But also he does have a lot of super armors, but it can be a little messy if you don't like use your supers effectively when you're in the midst of a battle. I make a lot of mistakes on my disengages a lot as a Berserker, so hopefully players learn it. But at the moment I just feel like it's a good class because of like all those things I said. It's really strong, it's real easy to play, has a lot of super armor protection. It's not the fastest, but it's definitely not the slowest, but you know, it has decent mobility, and again, ease of access, ease of use. I think that's what's going to make it such a high tier class, and damage is good. So next we're going to talk about the Gunlancer, or the Warlord, and I think this is also going to be just an A tier. I don't know if this is the A tier class. I actually haven't seen a good Russian Gunlance yet. I don't think I've ever played a Gunlance and felt like this guy was really good at it. And I have like a few hundred fights in Lost Ark. I'm probably not the highest rank in the Russian server, and that's probably why, but I'm gonna give the Gunlance a B. I think that's a fair location for it, a high B, because maybe players are just, maybe they're just good and I just don't see them because my ranking's a little bit on the lower side. I'm not sure. Gunlance is tanky. I guess it just depends on the person and how they play it, right? Because if you're peeling effectively as a Gunlance and you're landing your skills and you're like protecting your team and you're frontlining like you should be, I think you probably do pretty well, especially if you have a pretty decent comp. But I think if you're just playing the Gunlance very stupidly, I think he gets really punished for it. He's also really slow. So I'm not sure about this one. This one's actually been the only one that I had to really think about and really don't have an answer for. I think he's gonna do okay. I think his tankiness alone is gonna be enough. He does have a decent parry, so that should be okay because players are like kind of dumb and they don't really like pay attention. So maybe he does well, but I'm gonna give it B for now. I think the Gunlance is a solid class, but I think you just gotta be smart on how you play. If you're not playing really well, I mean, obviously with all classes, if you're not playing well, you're not gonna do well. But I think for this one, you really need to be like really smart on positioning as a Warlord, and you gotta peel really effectively. So I'm gonna leave it at B for now. And last but not least, we're gonna talk about the Paladin and the Holy Knight. And I'm giving it an S tier, as you probably can expect. A part of that is the same reasons why I give the Bard S tier. And if I'm being honest, I think if these two are equally skilled, I think the Paladin is actually better. Maybe? But I'll just explain why I think it's going to be a S tier. And that's obvious because it has the best shielding team shielding in the game. It's actually pretty easy to do. You press a button and your team gets like 2 shields. So that's really nice. Also on top of that, he has decent damage for a class that I would consider a pretty support heavy class. So you have this class that is going to be doing a ton of team shielding for your team, and then you have this class that's going to do really good damage for your team, and then you're going to have a class that can actually like control the battlefield, because they do have some spells that are just like good at like making people not move and CCing them and knocking them up, and like he has a mobility skill that knocks you up. So he's fast when he's doing it, and then he knocks you up, and it's hard to deal with. So Paladin is a S tier purely because he's support, he's good shield, and he's good damage, and he's just hard to deal with. So for me, that's why it's a clear and easy S tier. But yeah, that's gonna be pretty much it for my tier list. I can look over it again, maybe give a different opinion, but I don't think I really changed too much here. I don't really think there's any C tier classes. I do think Striker's a little bit on the weaker side. These two are on the weaker side. I think all these here, the last 4 is a little bit on the weaker side. Maybe even the Scrapper. And then the Gunlance, he feels so like, I don't know. He feels so weird for me. I'm not really sure, because I don't see many good Gunlances, but I know they're good because of their kit. Like, I can tell from their kit that they're good, but I just don't see anyone playing it good, so I'm not sure. But this is probably going to be the tier list I go with. This looks good to me. So let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree, or what you would change differently. Again, guys, this is just my personal opinion, and I just kind of want to give you guys a good outliner so you can have a better idea of why I feel these characters are strong, so that when you go into PvP, you can look out for maybe the Artillerist cheese, or the fact that you're going to have a bard that just makes up your life hell, or why your striker does 0 damage during the game. You'll have a better understanding why. So don't forget to like and subscribe, guys. Thanks for all the support in the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next Lost Ark video. Later.